Can we trust nutrition science? The Francis Crick Institute recently published a live recording of an episode of Brian Cox's A Question of Science podcast all around nutrition. I thought we discussed it a little today to be chatty and give my hands a break from typing, and also to prevent you from having to listen or watch the whole thing. Over half the UK population is overweight and a quarter obese. Is that because of the UK's food environment? Undoubtedly, at least in part. So much of the UK is overweight or obese. How can we reverse this, and how can you prevent becoming one of the people included in these stats? I think the issue is most people don't follow healthy eating advice. Most people know the advice, but most people just don't follow it. At least most people will know the government's advice. Whether or not you agree with that advice is a different point. Knowing the advice is just the first step, though. I think defining healthy eating as whatever your government defines it as, following the Eat Well guide, for example, I think is too simplistic. But on a population level, it does broadly work. If you want a quick bit of nutrition advice that will always stand true, follow Michael Pollan's advice to eat food, not too much, mainly plants. But if you're looking for the magic bullet, you're kind of already thinking about it the wrong way. Nothing in nutrition is really ever that simple. As Saliha Mahmood Ahmed, an NHS gastroenterologist and winner of MasterChef 2017, said, anyone who sees nutrition in black and white is probably giving you an incorrect answer, because most nutrition exists in a shade of grey. When you're looking for advice, be wary of any source aggressively pushing one viewpoint or being very black and white, all or nothing. Try personalize your nutrition to you, if you can. However, do we eat nutrients? No, we eat food. Of course, food is made up of nutrients, but they aren't eaten in isolation. So, I think the research is only semi-helpful. I'm not saying you shouldn't be looking at it, it's the best tool we have. I'm just saying how nutrients interact is just as important as what they do individually. Do you know where the reliance on single nutrients in scientific research came from? I didn't either before listening to the podcast, but I think it's quite interesting. Nutrients entered dietary guidelines in the 1970s after lobbying for the meat industry, trying to get rid of the common viewpoint at the time eating a lot of red meat is bad for heart health. Of course, we now know that that viewpoint is very true. A larger issue, as the panel said, is that diet can't be studied as a whole, really, or usually isn't anyway. Things are very hard to understand as part of a whole if studied in isolation. Let me give you an example. If calcium, vitamin D, and iron are studied separately in isolation, how do you know how the results of that work fit into your overall diet? You probably don't, unless you're really interested in the topic or study it. Did you know calcium becomes an anti-nutrient when consumed with iron? Probably not. Basically, if you have calcium and iron together, a lot of the iron isn't absorbed. What do you learn from that? You could learn that when you eat a cheeseburger, a lot of the iron from the meat won't be absorbed. Bear that in mind. Doesn't mean you have to never eat cheeseburgers again, but just bear in mind. Although never eating cheeseburgers again would help the planet. We need more holistic nutrition research and more credible nutritionists and dietitians on social media to drown out incorrect information going around. I know gold standard nutrition studies are hard to perform compared to medicines anyway. How do you do a placebo-controlled study on a keto diet, for example, or a double-blinded study on intermittent fasting? You simply can't. If we go by what Michael Pollan said, all processed food is bad, right? Actually, no. Tinned sweet corn, for example, as good for you as frozen corn. Very, very good. Canned beans, very nutritious. Actually, beans are super nutritious. The campaign by the Food Foundation, Veg Power, and Kent University Students' Union, Banging Some Beans, is trying to get people to realise just this. Celebrity chefs such as Jamie Oliver are even on board, trying to get the UK to double bean consumption by 2028. Basically, just don't villainise a whole category of foods. Processed foods certainly can be bad for you, especially ultra-processed foods, but they aren't always. As with all nutrition, it needs nuance, often lacking in media to gain views or sell certain products. In fact, if someone's trying to sell a product, be wary of the science they're selling you. It might be true, but it's very likely not to be. As Hippocrates said, let food be thy medicine. Doctors don't really. They don't advise patients to eat or avoid certain foods, for the main. In non-emergency situations, I think more doctors really should. As Salihan Mahmood Ahmed said, it's down to education. Very little nutrition education happens in med school. In fact, several generations didn't get any. It's only been added fairly recently. I'm definitely not excusing it, but I am explaining it. As one of the speakers, apologies for not remembering exactly who it was, said, the NHS is a disease service, not a prevention or health service. I think that's actually a great way of looking at it. The NHS is very good at helping someone in a health crisis, but not so good at helping prevent that crisis. I will not be going into the reasons why. I want to stay away entirely from politics, which is basically what the reasons are. But I do think it needs to change. Why are unhealthy foods so easily accessible? Until governments incentivize manufacturers to make healthy foods, or disincentivize them from making unhealthy foods, they'll stay very accessible. That's how capitalism works. They sell, of course. Of course they sell. They sell because they're tasty. Making a healthy or healthier thing tasty is hard. I've had some sugar-free chocolate before. It's okay, but definitely not as good as chocolate full of sugar. So, I mean, I'm not diabetic. I don't need to reduce my sugar. I don't need to avoid it. Why would I buy this chocolate? I just don't. I'm not trying to eat loads of chocolate. If I have it in moderation, perfectly fine. Life's just too short to be miserable, especially when it's so easy not to be. Let's switch gears quickly and talk about something very on trend. High protein foods. Are they healthy? Necessary? Should you buy them? Let's think of it like low fat products. When that was a trend, what did the food industry do? Create low fat products, yes, but they compensated for the taste by adding sugar. Now, we have an obesity epidemic. Okay, that's a little bit overly simplistic, but definitely one of the contributors to the epidemic for sure. Actually, on a population level, we're getting more protein than we need. Most people need 0.8 grams per kilogram body weight. Athletes and those over 60 are two groups that will need more. If you want to increase your protein, all for that, fine, but go for food sources naturally higher in protein than what you're currently having. Don't just add in a bunch of protein powders, shakes, or other sources with things added, unless you're really struggling. Did you know that many protein powders are actually constipating? So, I'll ask you this question. Why would they be your first choice? They really shouldn't be. I want to change your focus now. Unless you have a specific reason to focus on your protein, think about the nutrient often forgotten about fiber. Most people definitely aren't getting enough of that. You have to have 30 grams of it a day. I don't think I'm even getting enough of that, and I care about the subject and study it. Lastly, something really interesting that the podcast touched on. How close are we to personalized diets? Still quite far, actually. The science just isn't there yet. I would really love it to be, and believe we will get there, and it will be great when we do, but it's got a little way to go yet. We can't yet link genetics to nutrition, but we do know genetics play a role in nutrition. Anyone who tells you they can link your genetics to nutrition is not being fully truthful. They're probably just trying to sell you something. The bottom line, as excited as I am for a time personal nutrition is a thing, and that time will come, the science just isn't fully there yet. Everything we've spoken about links to cooking. As the Latin saying goes, "Coquo ergo sum." I cook, therefore I am. Humans are the only creatures that can cook. Very likely what made our brains bigger, guts shorter, and made us into the sophisticated beings we are today. There's no one quick answer to nutrition, but cook at home with whole foods and you'll be doing the best you can. If you don't always have time, cook in bulk on a day you do have more time and utilize your freezer. Leave any thoughts you have in the comments and tell me if you like this being an audio episode. Tell me if you didn't as well. All feedback, as long as it's honest and not said rudely, is good.